You gotta be kidding me! You gotta be kidding me! That's a Kimber! Twofer, baby! Oh! Again! That's a Twofer! That's a Kimber! Twofer, baby! Oh my god!
Welcome to another It's a Twofer, TUFF Channel's only double bill review show. Surprised these haven't caught on yet on the TUFF Channel. Speaking of which, make sure you check out all the other great content on this channel. But for right now, settle in. My name's Tom.
My name is Kimber.
And we have some great movies to talk about. And these are them.
A Clockwork Orange is the controversial 1971 Kubrick masterpiece adapted from the novel by Anthony Burgess. Malcolm McDowell stars as vicious and manipulative young murderer Alex DeLarge, as we follow his story in and out of prison. The film's sexual ultraviolence, Kubrick's iconic cinematic style, and the unique language used in the book and film Nadsat make this a film that's often imitated, inspiring scenes and references in nearly every corner of pop culture.
Bronson is the 2008 film by Nicholas Winding...
Hey, wait. What are you doing?
It's my turn.
These are my movies.
Oh.
Bronson is the 2008 film by Nicholas Winding Refn, with Tom Hardy in the lead role as Michael Peterson, who later adopted the name Charles Bronson. This self-aware homage to A Clockwork Orange is based on a true story, and leads us through the life of Britain's most violent prisoner. Much like Alex, Bronson narrates the story, allowing us to see the other sides of his personality, including his artistic and romantic sides, causing controversy about this film that depicts a real-life criminal who resides in prison to this day.
I think these movies pair very nicely together. This may be one of my favorite ones that we have done. At least one of the ones that felt so natural together.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that we've picked something that was very clearly directly inspired by the other one. Except for maybe, I don't know, you could almost say it with Black Swan and Suspiria, but I feel like it's even more present in this pairing. And we watched them in the order of A Clockwork Orange and then Bronson, and it's just very apparent that that this movie wouldn't exist without A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, a lot of things, especially some of the cuts, like some of the... One that stands out a lot is there's this one scene in Bronson where it's just photographs with like newspaper print kind of photographs, and it's like just shots of that panning.
Yeah.
And it reminded me very much of like the Beethoven opening, how it like cut into like a picture. So you can definitely see homages, even like a direct one, and we'll get into, they both revolve around prison, but when they both leave, they both have a yellow parcel in their hands. So I wonder if that was like a direct thing.
It could just be like a British thing though too.
Well, no. Oh, I guess maybe it's just, well, one was a box and the other one was a bag, but it was cool.
I do want to say that like this movie is very aware that it is reminiscent of A Clockwork Orange. It's clear when you're watching this that they know that that's a thing. It's
oh yeah,
they're playing it up almost.
Even because it does use classical music, the ending is very like, feels a lot of more like Clockwork Orange because it's actual classical music playing in the movie as opposed to over the movie.
Yeah.
It's both ingrained into the scene.
Yeah, and you notice like when he gets into really violent fights a lot, they'll go into the classical music as well. Like the music is swelling up around them.
He demands it.
Yeah. It's very, like, you're watching it and you're like, okay, I've seen something like this before. It reminds you so much of the fight scenes and the violence in A Clockwork Orange. Like the fight against the rival gang.
Yes.
It reminds me a lot of that. But usually it's just Bronson versus everyone. I really think Tom Hardy like gave it his all in this role. It's my favorite Tom Hardy performance.
He's a better Bane in this movie than he was in Dark Knight Rises.
And fun fact, the actual Charles Bronson, which we talked about, is a real guy, still in prison. He shaved off his mustache and sent it to Tom Hardy, and Tom Hardy is wearing his mustache in the film. That's dedication.
And kudos to Bronson, because that has to be like, he's in prison, but who knows if he's in solitary right now. But that's like iconic for him. Like that's a big part of, for someone who wants to be famous and well known so bad, like
It's like a huge part of his persona.
But I guess he felt it wasn't possible to do the character without having that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Maybe he sees it almost like a mask, you know?
Maybe. He's big into masks.
Another thing that these two movies shared was a lot of controversy.
Yes.
A Clockwork Orange coming out when it did, it was very shocking for people to see this amount of violence and this amount of nudity in a film like this. And
well, one stark difference in there's nothing that's not consensual in Bronson.
Yeah.
That's
with sexuality.
With sexuality, yeah. Well, no one's
no
going to
one's
punch me in the face.
to- yeah.
Well, I guess at Fight Club, but I feel like this one's Clockwork Orange is a little bit more controversial because it definitely touches more on something a lot more sensitive and real.
Yeah, it's controversial in a different way because the controversy with Bronson was more about people thinking that you're glorifying the life of this man who is so violent and has done so much damage. Like when we were watching the movie, and Tom has seen it before, but just refreshing his memory as one that he's not too familiar with.
Yeah, I saw it like I half watched it one time, not realizing Refn directed it, who I really like. He did Drive, Neon Demon. I haven't watched Neon Demon yet. That's next. But,
and it's funny because I got into Drive because I liked Bronson so much. To me, like he's the director of Bronson. But like we were watching the one scene where they show the riot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's explaining the riot that he started, and they're showing what seems to be, and we'd have to double check about this, but what seems to be actual footage of the riot that the real Charles Bronson started, and he's standing in front of it monologuing, which I love those parts. That's like my favorite part of this movie. I thought it was really interesting to look at when he was doing it, and he commands my full attention.
Yeah.
He's almost like playing like it's a one-man show. For you, and I'm a big fan of that choice. But so people were pissed a little bit, and they think it might inspire copycats, seeing a movie like this kind of glorifying, in their opinion, the life of this extremely like kind of not good dude. He is outrageously violent.
Yeah, can show emotion. You know what I mean? It's not like he's just a caged animal, but he very much is a caged animal.
But even when he tries to do nice things, it's still like in his violent way because like he wants to propose to the girl. He's scared that he's going to lose her because he gets out for 69 days, which is the longest amount of time. And I think the only time they let him out, and of course he's back in, he tries to get this ring for this girl to propose to her, but it ends up in him brutally assaulting the dude who works at the jewelry place and getting arrested again immediately, and she turns him down. So like things don't work out for him, and I feel like he kind of knows that it's not going to work out for him. Like this is a man who kind of doesn't know what to do with himself if he's not in prison. He calls the prison his hotel room.
Yeah.
And really the only time you see him want to escape at all is when we see him in a mental institution.
Yeah, that's rough. Because they're not helping, because unfortunately this was taking place, I think this was the 70s still, because they don't really like keep track of when he's in prison. They just say because he's out like what 20 years after he does initially his time.
Yeah, this has to be later.
They don't track because he doesn't age pretty much, so it's hard to keep track of time. But back then, like mental health facilities were horrible. Like they would just medicate you. And so he's just he doesn't even resemble a person anymore.
Yeah.
So that's rough. No one deserves that.
And that's another thing these movies have in common is that these people who are trying to help them end up causing them both great harm. With Alex rejecting the Ludovico treatment and being treated horribly by everybody, kind of in a poetic justice, very well packaged way. Which leads to him attempting suicide. And Bronson, like you said, they're torturing him in the mental institution. They're just drugging him constantly. He's just drooling and yet still so filled with rage. Like it does not help him at all.
Like, he's drooling, but his rage still like bubbles through his drool. Like it's shot very well.
And if anything, it just causes him to cause more violence than he would even, you know, have done in that situation, just to try to get back into prison where he felt like he was comfortable.
He's so desperate that he has to do something that he otherwise probably wouldn't have done, because he usually doesn't cross the line. He'll brutalize somebody, but he doesn't drop bodies, and he has to do what's necessary to get out of there, which which is common with Alex also having committed a murder in the first one. It's under different circumstances.
And Alex is supposed to be a lot younger as well.
16. It's
I
weird.
believe he is 16 in the books, and obviously Malcolm McDowell was older than that in the movie. But you can still see elements of how he's a childlike character, and it's carried over into the performance. And I think they even aged up like surrounding characters, but still kept a young mentality to them. Those two girls in the record store come to mind.
Well, they're supposed to be even younger in the book.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they kind of did the same thing
Yeah.
with them that they did with Alex, where you see them and they are in kind of like little girl clothing, and they're standing around and they're eating like popsicles, and the answers, like the conversation between them is even kind of like what they play their records on and what music they're getting. It's like casual talk, but it leads up very quickly into, of course, like it's way more about sexuality with A Clockwork Orange, and way more about violence.
Well, I mean, there's literal genitalia littered throughout A Clockwork Orange. Artistically, like it does look cool.
And there is in Bronson as well, but really we're only seeing Tom Hardy doing full frontal, and in Clockwork Orange we have lots of 70s babes doing full frontal, like numerous ladies. Even the furniture is nude women in that movie.
Yeah.
So one's very about violence and one's very about sexuality to me.
And beverage dispensers. Another difference is the way these stories presented to the audience. They are both narrated, and it's interesting because we brought up him monologuing and presenting a movie to the audience, and he talks to the like there is a literal theater he's talking in Bronson. And although it's theatrical and like a production, it's still more honest than Alex, who...
Alex is a liar, and Alex is a manipulator, and he, from the very first moment that he starts his dialogue speaking to us, the audience, is manipulating you. He's like, here's my story, you're my only friends, basically. Like, let me tell you, oh, it's so sad, all these things that happened to me.
Your one and only narrator. Like,
yeah.
he's trying to endear himself onto you. And it works. Like,
but yeah, it is interesting to have two movies that are narrated by the main character, who is a villain played as a protagonist, and they're just treating you very differently the way that they're coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Bronson is honesty, and honestly, he wants to tell you, like, I would, I don't kill people, like, I'll fight anybody, and he's covered in murders and will tell you the stories of that, but he doesn't consider himself a murderer. And I think Alex, although he does, like, say that it was an accident and that he didn't murder this woman, does consider himself a murderer. When he tells the guy what he's in prison for, he says murder, and he smiles. Another clear difference is that Alex is very much trying to get out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to sign up for this treatment that he's heard of because it'll get you out of jail in a fortniite. And
yeah, he's desperate to get out.
Bronson seems like he wants to go to jail. He's going the opposite way.
Yeah, because whenever life gets hard, because I almost thought when he did the engagement ring thing,
mm-hmm.
I had a feeling that he didn't think he was going to get away with it. I think it was a last-ditch effort, and he was like, well, if I can't have this girl, then I might as well go back to jail. And so it just worked out because the timing was perfect. He's like, call him in 15 minutes. Didn't even take them 15 minutes after that to get there.
Yeah.
I feel like he had it set up to be like, all right, if this doesn't work out.
You could see it that way. I think that he was just like that. He's a very emotional person, and that he doesn't think about. He didn't think that far ahead.
Right. No.
I think he didn't think that she was going to turn him down. He looked very surprised and disappointed, in my opinion.
I want to give him more credit than that because he already had the conversation.
I feel like he feels like I'm going to make this big gesture and everything's just going to work out.
No.
You know?
Well, there's plenty of people like that. If there was a piano in a park, he would be set. There's plenty of differences. They're both great movies on their own, but
One's based on a true story. The other one is a work of fiction.
Mhm.
I think these movies are great.
So I have a question for you. Who would win in a fight?
I think that it depends on what type of fight. In a verbal altercation, I feel like Alex would
Yes.
be able to manipulate the situation. He might even be able to manipulate the situation in a physical fight by talking his way out of it. 'Cause he's clearly very smart,
Silver tongue,
and he knows what he's doing. He also has concealed weapons, so it depends on if he has weapons, because really Bronson just comes at you with his fists and his might.
I love how when like someone compliments him on his strength or something, he just tightens up and it's just so like
he gives an amazing performance. I can't say enough about how good Tom Hardy is.
he really, and funny too, like, because I don't think we get to see Tom Hardy in comedic roles often.
No. I liked what you said. I know it's kind of out of place here, but what you said about when you were watching A Clockwork Orange, how it sounded like Shakespeare to you.
Yeah.
Like how it had a Shakespearean feel to the...
Well, and that's how like these movies also mirror each other, because it does feel like a performance. Like with anytime like music's used within the scene, it feels like it should be on the stage, and somehow I would see a live performance of either of these movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In A Clockwork Orange almost uses its signature language as music in a way.
Yeah.
Like there's definite like an iambic pentameter type feel to the way, the cadence that these lines are delivered. And this is in the scene where Dim challenges Alex, specifically, is when Tom kind of lit up about this Shakespeare idea. But I never thought about that way, and I just thought it was a really interesting way to look at it.
He talks like that when he's trying to intimidate. Like that's because he'll talk to the audience too, but it's either intimidate or manipulate. Because I feel like he's talking to Dim, who is Dim, and he's speaking very eloquently. You know what I mean? He's throwing punches already before that even starts.
And he postures,
which is,
too.
yeah.
Like he very much like will stare you deeply in your eyes and put himself in this stance and kind of...
Alex reminds me, my favorite Shakespeare character is Iago, and from Othello, and not Aladdin. And I think he's very conniving, just like Alex. Like that's who if I had to pick anyone, I'm sure there's other
Alex
examples.
is the little finger of the situation.
Yeah.
Very much so, the little finger. He's controlling things, and that's why he likes to have this gang behind him too. And I think Bronson doesn't need that, because Bronson is just like a big, like a hammer. He's like the Robert Baratheon of the situation.
It's Death Wish. That's why he's called Bronson.
Yeah, I loved that scene where his friend names him that.
I also liked how we were talking about how for Alex, violence is music, but for Bronson, music is violence. I think it's cool how it's like two sides of the same coin. But let's see some other sides of, I don't know, I guess a die, because coins only have two sides. But we went to Twitter, and we asked everybody, what movie would you pair with either Bronson or Clockwork Orange? So we're going to go through and bring some of those up. Kim Hanley, she said, Clockwork Orange and Manchurian Candidate for the conditioning themes.
Okay.
Which, interesting.
Which, yeah, that actually really did traumatize Malcolm McDowell. He's spoken openly about how eye drops are a no-go.
Kim Hanley also said matching Bronson with either Alfie or Fight Club because of their use of asides to varying effect. You want to get the next one?
Sure. Yusuf at Why I Love Movies said Bronson and Filth. I'm not familiar with that movie. But, yeah, and Nolan is saying Nightcrawler. I'm not sure which one he is trying to match that with, but I love Nightcrawler. I'm down to watch that one with either of these movies.
Jazzy Goose said Malcolm McDowell and double it with If. I think If is another Malcolm McDowell movie, but it could be. Tina says she would pair A Clockwork Orange with a Full Metal Jacket and do a Kubrick marathon. Because she says Kubrick is amazing. And after this, maybe we should speak a little bit about the directors, because they are both, well, one of them's already a legend. Brian suggests matching either of these movies with Chopper from 2000, starring Eric Bana, I'm not familiar with it, but Sam retweeted that, so he must know what we're talking
Yeah, and I
about.
actually saw that on some lists of movies inspired by Clockwork Orange. So
Randall? Oh,
Randall Sands at Randall Sands said he would put A Clockwork Orange and The Lobster. Lobster is one of the movies on my list that I have not got a chance to see that
Yeah.
I'm really interested in. So I like that endorsement.
Joe says Taxi Driver. He would match that with either one of these movies. I would see it. Yeah, it would pair well with either one of them, honestly. Troy has a great one. He says Clockwork Orange and the Warriors. And he also says Bronson and Drive. Bronson and Drive, obviously, because Refn did both of those movies.
Yeah, The Warriors, obviously being another great movie, clearly inspired by Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, and Morgan also said, for some odd reason, he says that whenever he wants to watch Clockwork, he also wants to watch it with Escape from New York, which I could also see like the gang culture existing in that. That's interesting. Kimber keeps alluding to another question we asked, and that was what movie do you enjoy that was inspired by Clockwork Orange? And without doing research, it's kind of unless you're very familiar with the movie, hard to like hone in on that. Some of them are obvious love letters, like Bronson, and another love letter to Kubrick would be There Will Be Blood.
And I think there is a lot of this type of villain as the protagonist in There Will Be Blood, so I would certainly consider that one of them. Another great one is Funny Games.
Yes.
Clearly inspired by.
Which is funny because Funny Games has no score. So to put these to put it with either one of these movies would be kind of like just holding it would be interesting. I don't know. Heath Ledger also noted that his portrayal of the Joker was based on Alex DeLarge. So there's a lot of character influences, a lot of story influences.
Tons of references everywhere.
Shaun of the Dead.
The Simpsons, Tenacious D, and The Pick of Destiny. It's really endless. Like if you look over if you Google A Clockwork Orange references, you're just gonna get pages and pages of stuff.
And I mean, Kubrick even makes a self-reference in A Clockwork Orange with having
the 2001 album is clearly in the front of the record store that they're at for sure.
And we mentioned before Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead's throwing Clockwork Orange's record at Zombies. So it all translates down the line. It is definitely an influential movie, not just on film, but in pop culture in general.
Yeah.
People with tattoos of Clockwork Orange.
My friend Amanda Dooley has 2 A Clockwork Orange tattoos that I put on her personally. So.
It's a good movie. And I think they're both good movies, and you should definitely check them out. Check out the stuff by the directors that aren't these movies also. I mean, if you haven't seen many of the Kubrick movies, there's a bunch of them, but
there's something for everyone, really. He did
sure.
a lot of different genres.
And Refn, I love his color palette, and I love his use of music. I'm a big fan, so just keep doing what you're doing, Refn. And
Kubrick, we miss you, even though you were kind of a mean person.
Steven Spielberg was awesome. Just watched an awesome documentary. Maybe we'll put one of those in here one of these days. But upcoming, we have Get Out and Stepford Wives.
Yep.
Try to get that out around Halloween. And we hope you come by. Check out this Thursday. We'll do a promo for it. It might be more of a dialogue promo because I cannot think of any music associated with either movie. So we'll have that out the following Thursday. As far as finding us off of TUFF, check out Odd Shape Channel. We do live shows at least 2 times a week, and we have other little things popping up here and there all the time.
I'm recording Space Time Rewind tomorrow with Nolan Dean, our new Doctor Who show, so look out for that coming soon.
It's exciting. We also have Encrypted, which is our cryptozoology podcast with me and Cal, the Kingslayer from Night's Watch. He's called Cal the
Jersey Devil.
Anytime Cal's involved with some kind of name, which is always because he has 50 of them, I screw it up somehow. And then we also have the Mormo Zone with Mormozine, and for sure, Odd Shape Panel, which we're having an OSP and chill this coming Monday. We're going to talk about some Szechuan sauce. Probably going to talk about Blade Runner. No, there's probably going to be tons more stuff. You can send us questions at Odd-Shaped Panel, or
At Kimberbatch_OSP.
I'm gonna tweet out something and you'll see the thumbnail and reply. Do that. Thanks everyone. Bye.
You gotta be kidding me! You gotta be kidding me! That's a Twofer! Twofer, baby! Oh, again! Again, that's a Twofer! That's a Twofer! Twofer, baby! Oh my god! Oh, again! Again, that's a Twofer! That's a Twofer! Twofer, baby!